So, people, let's take a look at our planet, the people, my blood. This is the brand new film from Daniel Everitt-Lock. It's actually his feature directorial debut, documentary debut, that is. Okay, so he writes and directs. The film is then produced by Daniel Everitt-Lock, along with Asif. It is executive produced by Rodrigo Bordadaza, Ivan Madeira, Gianna Isabella Magliocco, Alan Owen, with associate production from Lucy Lemonori, Daniel Lacroix, Alex Gregson. The score was handled by Philo Schaller. We've got Daniel Everitt-Lock on cinematography. He also edits the piece. Okay, so then it is on to our cast, right? So the film features Alan Owens, Susie Boniface, Claudia Peterson, John Hayes, Avon Hudson, Mel Owen, Rebecca Long Bailey, Howard Kakita, Jeremy LaBourse, Tom Bailey, Lincoln Graffels, Laura Jackson, Lucinda Anitok, Roy Vincent, John Morris, Mary Dixon, Twa-Le Abrahamson, Eric Barton, Roger Grace, Joe Mangano, Jesse Jasper, Jane O'Connor, Ollie Troyan, Paul Grigo, Harvey Forstad, Brian Ofank, Robert Jacobs, David Anitok, Terry Quinlan, Jonathan Jackson, Keith Kiefer. So yes, that's we have interviews and things with all of those different people. All right. So the gist of the film, right? It is Alan Owen's father stood on Christmas Island in 1962. He was a nuclear test veteran, one of thousands of British servicemen ordered to witness nuclear weapons tests, with little understanding of what exposure would mean for them, or for the generations that followed. He died in 1994. His son has spent his life demanding answers. Our planet, the people, my blood, follows Alan Owen, co-founder of LABRATS International, former chairman of the British Nuclear Test Veterans Association, and most recently a speaker at the United Nations in New York, as he leads a landmark legal battle seeking recognition and compensation for the millions of people affected by nuclear weapons testing programs worldwide. Spanning 150,000 kilometers and 4 continents, Everitt-Lock and co-producer Rodrigo Borda gathered over 50 first-hand testimonials from indigenous Marshallese communities, the Maralinga Tauntia of Australia, the Spokane Nation of the United States, and survivors of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The result is a sweeping, deeply human account of communities forgotten by the governments that harmed them, and of a fight for justice that refused to die. So yeah, that's the film, and it's it's crazy that this film, you know what I mean, it was planned years ago. It's just about to drop, and what what is currently happening in the world, it's kind of crazy that it's dropping at this moment in time, where I think, you know, people will pay notice, right? Because it is very precedent to what is going on. We do have a director's statement, right? It reads, 9 years ago, I watched a short film about nuclear test veterans and couldn't believe what I was hearing. What shocked me more was that no one I spoke to had ever heard of these people or what had been done to them. I set out to make a documentary that would do justice to this subject and give these communities the voice they deserve. To sit with an audience now, watch them have the same reaction I had 9 years ago, that is everything I set out to do. So yeah, and I think I have seen like documentaries and programs about people who were subjected to like the test practices of nuclear weapons. But everything I have seen in the past has focused on one group, right? One country. It's never been something that, you know, took a wholesale look at this whole situation, that dealt with the consequences on 4 different continents. And that's one thing that really sets this apart, right? That makes this unique. And also, it's the building of the tidal wave, right? Because when you look at a single part, it's like a pebble, right? It's like throwing a pebble into the wind. But you bring all of those things together, and that gives you an undeniable force, right? So what Daniel was able to do here was, you know, a really good thing, because, you know, I think when people hear something, right, they're like, that's bad, but, you know, is it just them? So then you add a bit more, right? And a bit more and a bit more, and it becomes undeniable, right? People are able to see, oh, it's not just in the UK, right? It's not just in the United States. It's not just Australia, right? You can see it's in multiple places, right? So it's not just, oh, well, that's a corrupt government, right? It's like, oh, fuck, all of these governments are fucked up, right? And that's what it is. Because when you hear about something like this, right, you understand that this is such a huge cover-up, you know? That this is something that goes beyond one person, like, you know, hiding a fire. It's multiple people that have worked together to ensure the misery, the hardship, the ill health of, you know, a group of people who, unbeknownst were put in harm's way for who knows, right? Now, listen, I'm not naive to believe that, no one needed to develop the nuclear weapon, because once the cat is out the bag, right, if you don't try to have one, you're going to be the only one without it, right? And, countries like, they use them as a deterrent, right? As a tool to ensure that other people do not launch. I get that, right? I definitely do get it. It's been like we hear in a documentary, people often do talk about, I don't know why you needed to do more than the one test. Now, I also understand the need to do multiple tests, right? It's like with a lot of things, there's so many variables and different things, and you have to make sure that, okay, does it work in these conditions? What about with these variables and these so I understand all of that, right? But when you know what the potential consequences of these things are, protect the people that are there to help you. Give them the right clothing, give them the right information, and then help them, right? Give them the proper care if they do get ill. Don't bury your head in the sand. And, well, it's not even burying your head in the sand, right? It's just, evilness, right? Denying help when you know it's on you that they need that help. That's the crazy thing. Now, we get this whole look because, when you think about things happening around the world, right? Like, we understand there's been so many cover-ups, right? And I do think, as well as coming at a time when, nuclear weapons are definitely forefront of the news, we also come at a time when, people trying to cover stuff up has been unearthed so many times, right? The lies, the misleading of the public, that's become such a big thing. The church has been caught out around, child abuse, around forced adoptions, right? Murders of black and indigenous children, right? Something they denied, right? They denied hiding pedophiles, right? Sex offenders. And we're talking about their own priests and archbishops and all of that malarkey, right? They denied it. But evidence was there. And it came out, right? Came out. So all of these things, we've had all of these things, right? The denials of people like the BBC about, not having the negatives of black shows. And then George Floyd dies, and then suddenly they have the shows, right? We've seen countless cover-ups, so many during the pandemic, right? So I don't think when people watch this that there will be a huge surprise to them, because people do not believe, right, that governments are unfathomable anymore, right? They don't believe that they are solely there to help and serve their people. I don't think anyone believes those things anymore. So what Daniel is able to unearth here, right? Alan Owens is the linchpin of it all, right? And that's because he, as mentioned, he co-created an organization called LABRATS International, right? Because he first worked for a British association to help people, from the effects of nuclear weapon testing. But that was just UK based. And he found that, every country, for the most part, had one of these kind of organizations, but they're not working together. And that's why they created LABRATS International, which is, a great idea. And because of that, it makes sense for him to be the center of all of this, And so we just go and we visit all of these different places and we hear about just the craziness of it all, right? The fact that soldiers, they're protected. In one place, their protective uniform was a t-shirt and shorts, right? And you're told to turn your back on the explosion and put your fists in your eyes. That's gonna save you, right? So it's all of these things. I knew they did testing in islands close to Hawaii. I didn't know that the explosion was so big that it actually sunk a couple of the islands. Right? Like, you don't hear about these things. You hear about some stuff, but not the full extent of it all. And so that's what we get here. These really poignant conversations with, survivors and their loved ones, right? And we hear about, because when it's like also the family, of these survivors, right? Their children. And then you hear about the symptoms and ailments that the children suffer from and face, right? And it's just like, oh shit, this isn't by chance, right? This isn't a coincidence, right? Because it's knowing that certain fallout from nuclear weapons, right, attaches like calcium, right? So now it's in your bones, right? It's these things, and it's like people know these things, right? It's similar to when Teflon dumped their waste in rivers, knowing it's a forever chemical. So knowing that you've now poisoned that watering source and not caring, right? It is these similar things that we learn when it comes to nuclear weapons, right? And even with certain things in place, it's still not enough, right? It's still not enough. There was this, I think it's RECA, a bill in the States. And it was there to try and help people that are affected by, the fallout of. But the area, you had to be within this certain area from like ground zero. But it's not a large enough area, right? You take into effect wind, right? Climate, all of these things. So it's going to go further, Then it's having to prove, right? You have to prove that your illness is an effect of, right? It's just nuts. It's all crazy. Right, but all of this is brought to bear expertly by Daniel and his crew, So we just hear all of these things. And it's very hard hitting, people. This is not feel good, right? It's poignant. It's what you need to know. You know? These things, we need to know these things. And so it is laid out for us expertly. I will say the one thing that was a little bit, right, it's just the musical beds underneath people talking. I never really think those things are needed, you know? I think words speak for themselves, right? These moments are powerful in themselves. We don't necessarily need a music, you know, to go, yes, this is hard hitting, right? We don't really need it. But other than that, yeah, you know, I think maybe Alan could have voiced the text at the end of the film as well, right? But I think other than those two things, this documentary has you gripped. It really does. It has you. It is like Icarus, you know, the documentary about the guy, right, who wanted to do the Tour of France clean and then do it on, you know, all of these enhancing drugs to see what the effect was, right? How greatly do they improve your performance? And whilst he was doing that, he found a Russian scientist to help him. There's loads of people just like, no, that's crazy. We're not going to pump you full of steroids. But this Russian guy was like, okay, I'll help you. And it was by chance that he was the head of Russian drug testing, right? And when you're the head of Russian drug testing, you're also the head of supplying athletes with those drugs, right? And so it was at the Sochi Winter Olympics, and this whole big scandal came out, right? And it is, you know, it's a fascinating documentary. And, you know, our world, my people, my blood, our world, the people, my blood, right? It is on that same level, right? It is on that same impactful piece. So yeah, if you're a fan of Icarus, if you are a fan of hard-hitting documentaries, poignant pieces, you know, world history and the ramifications of, I think this is something you most definitely will want to see. Right? It is having its world premiere at the Prince Charles Cinema in London, Leicester Square. Right? So that's taking place on the, I believe it's the 12th of March. I think there are still some tickets, so people go check that out. The link will be on the episode page, and then all the other screening information, because it will then be screening at other festivals and places, you know. So all that information will be on the webpage, and I definitely think that you should go check it out, okay? So yes, people, that is my views on Our World, The People, My Blood. It is a phenomenal documentary, definitely worth seeing, and a must see at that.